Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about if you have your rising sign, which is your ascendant, and in Vedic astrology called the Lagna, in Virgo. So we're going to talk about Virgo rising. Now, what is the rising sign? Once again, it is when a particular sign is on the eastern horizon at your time and place of birth. So that means that sign sets up your first house and it depicts everything about your chart, where the planets are going to fall in your chart. So knowing that your rising sign is in Virgo, and by the way, if you want to know your rising signs, go to my website and go to the free chart calculator and put in all your information. Remember, the rising sign is determined by your time of birth. So you'll want to scroll down to the bottom and look at where the AS is, that's your ascendant, rising, or called the Lagna. So before I begin, I want to remind everyone to sign up for my free newsletter. Go to galacticcenter.org and you will get all of my predictions delivered to your email address every week. And while you're at galacticcenter.org, take note of my spiritual jewelry. And one more thing, if you want to learn Vedic astrology with me, I've got a new start date, July 6th. Go for it. It's time to be able to predict your future. So that is at University of Vedic Astrology.com. Now let's get going with Virgo rising. What if you have Virgo rising? Let's talk a little bit generally about what Virgo's all about. That means you are meticulous, you're extraordinarily detailed, you pay attention to things nobody else ever dreams to look at, and that makes you extremely analytical and critical. So, you are very scrutinizing and very criticizing, but this is good. We need Virgos around to do the tedious work that none of us else like to do. As a matter of fact, Virgos love to do this tedious, intricate, detailed work, paying attention to every minute detail there is. And Virgo is also the sign of health and healing. And usually somebody with a strong Virgo influence will love healing and health and diet, nutrition, exercise, how to improve your life and make yourself better. Okay? This is the generality of what I see Virgo being all about. Virgo is a mutable sign, which means it's very changeable. It can change quite rapidly. But it's an earth sign, so Virgos are really down to earth. But I'll tell you something I've learned about this sign. They can be worrywarts. They're always worrying about something. And when there's something not to worry about, they'll find something to worry about. So they're always thinking. Why? Because Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and we're going to talk about when Mercury goes to all the different houses, because that is your chart ruler. I always call the chart ruler the planet that rules the ascendant. So one more thing, let's talk about the certain degrees, because you will have a different nakshatra ruling your ascendant depending on what degree your ascendant is. So if your ascendant extends from 0 Virgo to 10 degrees of Virgo, then you have your ascendant rising sign in the nakshatra called Uttara Phalguni. And Uttara Phalguni it's the friendly nakshatra. It deals with people that are loyal, good friends. So they make wonderful friends. They love friendship, but they also love relationships to the point where they don't particularly like to be alone. And because of that, sometimes they get too rapidly into rebound relationships because they don't like to be alone. And even if they're not with a relationship, then it will have something to do with looking for friendship, people that they can relate to. And this is because this is one of the marriage nakshatras, so that's why they are very much involved in relationships. But sometimes they need to be a little bit more careful about the relationships they become involved in. Now, if your rising sign extends from 10 degrees Virgo to 23 degrees, 20 minutes of Virgo, then your rising sign, your degree of your ascendant, sits in the nakshatra Hasta. Hasta means hand, and what it traditionally means is the ability to really grasp on and to hold on to things. People with Hasta rising are extraordinarily smart. They can really understand concepts, grasp onto things, but sometimes they have a problem letting go, because when you hold things, you don't let go. You got to learn how to release and let go many times. But Hasta is a nakshatra that's ruled by the moon, so this is a very strong and powerful ascendant to have. Denotes great high intelligence, sensitivity, and it's a wonderful rising sign to have in Virgo. I love that nakshatra because you know what, they get things. They just get it. You don't have to go into great detail. So if your rising sign extends from 23 degrees, 20 minutes of Virgo to the last degree of Virgo, then you're going to have Chitra as the degree your rising sign sits in. And Chitra means the bright shining one. It means a gem. And these people stand out in a crowd. They shine, they love bright colors, and that's unlike the other two nakshatras for Virgo rising, but they love bright colors and they stand out. And they love jewelry and probably clothing. And sometimes they can be very entertaining in the entertaining business. They are incredibly expressive because Chitra is ruled by Mars, so they're very, very expressive. Whereas Uttara Falguni, the first one, is ruled by the Sun, which would make them very focused in finding themselves. But the Mars one is very active, so Chitra is very active and out there and can be very showy at times. But it is an extraordinary nakshatra to make somebody very, very attractive. So if you have Virgo rising and your Mercury sits in your first house, this means your chart ruler, Mercury, which rules Virgos, in your first house, then you have Mercury in Virgo. And you have what's called a Bhadra Yoga. Wonderful thing to have. What's a Bhadra Yoga? Bhadra Yoga means everything to do with what Mercury is about is who you are, which is extraordinarily intelligent, witty. There's something about communications that you just tap into and you do so well. Love of travel. Everything that Mercury's about is who you are. This is exalted Mercury in the ascendant, gives a Bhadra Yoga. And there's so much that you love learning. You can't stop learning, always gathering information, always learning. So let's say you have Mercury in your second house, your chart ruler with Virgo rising. This means your Mercury is in Libra in the second house. And this means you have a lot of grace and charm. You know how to speak well. You're very sociable. You have social skills. You know how to address people, and you wouldn't dream of not being courteous and nice and sending thank you cards and appreciation cards of all kinds, because your way of communication is so beautiful. And in this second house, it rules also your childhood experiences, which you probably had lots of opportunity for good education and travel as a child. But this is a beautiful placement. So if you have Virgo rising and your Mercury sits in the third house, this means your Mercury's in Scorpio. And Mercury in Scorpio in the third house means Well, first of all, communications are so important to you because that's a third house variable. To have Mercury there, you're good at it. You love to travel. You're constantly going places. Mercury is always on the move. But in Scorpio, you're very passionate about what you learn and direct and determined to learn and get through school. School is very important, especially through grade school and high school. You are going to be very apt to be at the top of your class because you're passionate and directed into your learning. And you might find you could even be a twin, or you're very close to one of your siblings, with Mercury being in the third house in Scorpio. Now, if you're a Virgo rising and your moon sits in the fourth house, then this means your Mercury is in Sagittarius. And this would mean a very adventuresome, well-educated mother probably, or just a mother that really is expressive. That's what I'll say. In communications, in that field. But also, you might find that you change residences a lot. Mercury is that movable planet that moves fast. And so you could move around a lot. There's not a lot of stability in the house or where you stay for long. Mercury in the in the fourth house in Sagittarius, you aspire to learning higher-minded things, education. You have many learning materials in the home, and you love to be at home, and that's where you learn the quickest and the best. So if you have Mercury in your fifth house and you have Virgo rising, this means Mercury's in Capricorn. And this would mean you probably do quite well with writing, with expressing yourself. But at the same time, Capricorn means it's got to be something very usable, very authentic. That's not necessarily abstract painting. You need to have something that you create that's tangible and usable on everyday basis. And it can mean children, being close to children, communicating with your children well, but on a practical way, because remember, Capricorn is all about being practical and usable, and that's where your mind goes. You want to be able to use the things you create and you work on. Maybe this is even the sign of the entrepreneur, somebody who's creating business, because that's what Capricorn's all like. So let's say you have Virgo rising, but your Mercury sits in the sixth house. This means Mercury's in Aquarius. And Aquarius is the sign that deals specifically with humanity, helping people. That's what you love to do. You want to get into a career and a profession that you feel like you're helping and making the world better. Or you might be fascinated with learning about health, diet, nutrition. And especially, for the groups, for the masses, healing. That's something you're going to want to learn more and more about. And probably exercise. But you're very much changeable in what you do. You've got to have variety. That's another thing. Even in the foods you eat, with Mercury being in your sixth house. And you might even be very interested in dealing with pets and healing of pets, veterinarian work, but doing something important for the world in Aquarius or humanity. So if you have Mercury in the seventh house and you're a Virgo rising, this means you have Mercury debilitated in Pisces. And actually, I don't think debilitations for Mercury are all that bad. It simply means you learn differently and you think differently than the masses. And Mercury being in the seventh house actually can talk more about your partnerships. You want somebody that you can relate to, but the way that you relate is very, very unusual. So you need that unusual partner that communicates on a different level with you. And sometimes you might have a partner that's very different and learns differently, has a different mindset, but you have to have a relationship with somebody that you can communicate with. Otherwise, it's not going to work, because that's number one most important with Mercury. And especially even being in Pisces, you need someone that's highly sensitive, that feels like you do. You've got to get that you can communicate your feelings with each other. So if you have Virgo rising and your Mercury sits in your 8th house, that means you have Mercury in Aries. And this is very progressive. You're always thinking about how to get to the bottom of things, because Mercury in the 8th is all about research. And actually, Mercury is the only planet that does well in the 8th house. In other words, it doesn't lose strength. So it being in the 8th house in Aries like gets to the target. It's strong, it's fast, it's furious. So you're always looking at details. With Virgo rising, Mercury in the 8th, details and research into the details and the minor aspects of things. But you'll always be interested in life after death, where we go when we die, and metaphysical sciences. This is Mercury in the 8th house. And intuition. So let's say that you have Mercury in your 9th house and you have Virgo rising. Then this means that you have Mercury in Taurus. And this can actually mean that your father is highly intelligent, but very grounded, the salt of the earth, but highly evolved with his mental capacity. And with Mercury being in Taurus, you are very grounded in your beliefs and how you believe the world comes together, your spirituality. And in education, you're going to tend to want to learn things more about maybe our agriculture, growing things, flowers, the earth, but traveling. Oh my gosh, you love to travel, but you love to travel to the most beautiful places in the world, because Taurus is all about flowers and beauty and mountains, and this is where you love to go and the things you love to learn about. If you have a Virgo rising and your Mercury sits in your 10th house, you're lucky, because this means Mercury is in Gemini. And you have a Bhadra Yoga, because whenever a planet is in its own sign of rulership or exalted in an angular house, this constitutes one of the Mahapurusha Yogas. And Mercury is Bhadra Yoga. So this is your whole quest in life and what you're all about, and how you define yourself will be through your work. And your work should have something to do with your communication skills, either writing, speaking, media, computers, passing on information. You're incredible at that. And Mercury being in Gemini, elevated in the chart, you've got a fantastic sense of humor. Mercury is the trickster, and Mercury in Gemini is funny. And that's going to be one of the ways that's always going to get you to get people to open up through laughter. Use it. You have a great gift and talent for that. And you will be very successful with your work, no doubt. Let's say you have a Virgo rising and Mercury sits in your 11th house. This means that Mercury is in Cancer. And this also means your chart ruler goes to the 11th house of friends, groups, and organizations. You are surrounded by people that you communicate well with. You search out those that you can learn things from too. All your friends are probably pretty intellectual, but they're very sensitive in how they think and feel, because Mercury is in Cancer. And you are too. So you seek out those people that feel the same way you do, that relate the same way you do. And you will always have a lot of friends and acquaintances. People surround you. You love groups. And another thing means you could be close to your eldest sibling. You communicate well on a personal, sensitive, emotional level. Okay, so if you have Virgo rising, and your chart ruler Mercury sits in the 12th house, this means your Mercury is in Leo. And to have the chart ruler in the 12th house, you need your time alone. You need your time for solitude. This is how you truly recharge your batteries. But you need that time just to think beyond your own and learn. You love to be by yourself in a learning capacity, always reading or writing, contemplating, in your world of imagination. And Leo makes it big and makes you very, very creative in this sense. So you have great, grand ideas, and you may love to be alone to process and journal your thoughts, but don't hang on too much to the past. But with Mercury in the 12th house, you will probably travel as well to many foreign places, because there's this love of travel and grandeur, to travel in style. Why? Because it's in Leo. And that's how you think, in grandness and bigness. And you will always be a leader with Mercury in Leo with Virgo rising. So with that, I've covered all the places that your chart ruler could be if you have a Virgo rising. And I'm sure this really, really connects and resonates with you and gives you a lot of information that you can learn from. So with that, I'll close. Remember, if you would like to learn Vedic astrology with me, go to my university website, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. And remember, we have a new start date, July 6th. So I'll see you there. Thank you.